Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Journey of the Soul. So I want to begin by saying how grateful I am that you're all here with me today. And of course, for the next 6 weeks, we have a really incredible learning experience set. The lessons, each lesson is going to be filled with not just information, but also inspiration. And indeed, as it is Journey of the Soul, this will be a journey together. I think everyone knows, I'll just introduce myself just in case. Rabbi Ari Sollish, I'm the director of the Torah Center. I will say my alternative name for this course is Journey of the Soul-ish. I'm kidding, that's not at all. But nonetheless, first bad joke, we'll just logged in. All right, we got it. I do want to share the following. There's a guy that's on a date, and him and the girl, they're in a restaurant, and the date is tanking. You ever been on a date that just wasn't going well? Yeah, ever happened? Ever happened, right? The date is just terrible. He wants to end it. He doesn't know how. He goes to the bathroom. From the bathroom, he calls his best friend, and he says, listen, do me a favor. In about 10 minutes, call me, right? Just call me. He's like, why? It doesn't matter. Just give me a call and just follow along. So the guy returns from the bathroom, sits down again opposite his date. In about 10 minutes, his phone rings. He looks shocked as he looks at the number. He answers it. He says, oh no. Oh, that's so sad. That's terrible. I'm so sorry to hear that. He hangs up his phone. He does a better job than I'm doing in this retelling of his acting. And he hangs up the phone, looks toward his date and says, I'm so sorry. I just got a call. My aunt, my great aunt just passed away. And I got to be with my family. She says, I'm so happy that happened, because if it wasn't your aunt, it was going to have to be my aunt. That's how bad the date was going. Okay. You with me on that? All right. She's like, I would have to pull the same prank. So here's the deal. In all seriousness, our topic is a very serious topic. It's about life, death, and the afterlife. It's really what comes next. A topic that I think many of us think about. And as we get older, I can just speak for myself. As I get older, it's a topic that I think about more and more. And it's an area of inquiry that is shrouded on many levels in a lot of mystery, right? Because who has been back from the other side to let us know what it looks like or what it feels like? And so many of us go off of, I don't know, simple conjecture or hopefulness or some other form of belief. In this series, we're going to present age-old Jewish wisdom from classic Jewish sources on the experience of life, death, and the afterlife. And some of the questions we're going to address is what happens when we die? Is death the end? Is death painful? Can we communicate or still have a relationship with those whom we've loved and lost? Can they have a relationship or maybe communicate even the other way with us? How can we heal after devastating loss? How can we help comfort others who have experienced loss and help them heal? Is there heaven and hell? If yes, what is that experience like? What does that look like? Does Judaism believe in reincarnation? Does Judaism believe in reincarnation? I'm kidding. I just did that again because. All right. And of course, what is our ultimate destiny? What is the ultimate destiny of the soul? Like when in the timeline or the arc of the soul's existence, what is the end game for the soul? So all of these are good questions, really good questions, powerful questions, important questions, and all will be covered in depth in this course. So over the next 6 weeks, we are going to look at life, death, and what lies beyond. Again, drawing from classic Jewish sources, Torah, the Bible, Talmudic sources, Midrashic sources, Halachic sources, Jewish legal sources, as well as Kabbalah, Jewish mystical sources. All will be in play in the conversation. And so I want to give you a brief overview of the 6 lessons of this course. Lesson number 1, which is today, is called the title is Life and Death. Lesson 2, next week, Soul Departure. Lesson 3, Grief and Consolation. Lesson 4, Heaven and Hell. Thank you very much. Heaven and Hell. Lesson 5, Reincarnation. And Lesson 6, Destiny. I'm excited to begin, so let's get started. So I want to begin with kind of an open question. And the question is, hey man, good to see you. The question is, I want to speak from an emotional place, or kind of start a conversation from an emotional place and ask, when you think about that, even let's say about your own mortality, so what feelings come? What feelings do you feel when you think about death? Sad? Fear? Uncertainty? Okay. What else? What other emotions might come to mind? Setting? Relief. Interesting. Relief. So I think for many, I think all of these feelings are feelings that maybe we've felt or sensed on some level. But one that comes up very often in conversation, and one of the ones that psychologists and people that deal in the space talk about a lot when working with people, is fear. Is that sense of fear and foreboding about one's own mortality. And the question is, if we break it down again psychologically, we get to the heart of it. What is the fear of death about? Now, that might sound like a silly question. What do you mean? Why not fear death? Sounds like a very fearful or scary thing. But yet, let's talk about this. What is the fear? So one answer, good. So Claire is saying it's unknown, right? So it's an unknown. It's an unknown quantity. We don't know what it. Right? We haven't experienced it. We don't know what it's going to feel like. What it's going to be like. What happens on the other side. So there's this uncertainty. The counter to that is that not everything that is unknown induces fear. Sometimes we don't know what something's going to be like, but we're excited to try it. Right? It's like, oh, here's something new. I haven't experienced it. I'm excited about trying it. So uncertainty doesn't, by definition or inherently, equal fear. So although uncertainty is one of the most cited, I think people say that their fear is due to the uncertainty. If you really break it down further, there's probably another element to play, because uncertainty in and of itself does not directly induce fear per se. Again, about to say a really bad example that's going to work the other way. I've never skydived. I'm actually terrified. So that's a bad example. All right, scratch that. But there are other things, right, which I can't think of right now, that I haven't tried yet, that I might be excited to explore. So what is it about death? And I think in addition to there being the uncertainty, there's another factor. What do you guys think? That's what I was thinking. Finality. The idea that it's over. And that sense that everything will come to a crashing end, for many, that is profoundly fearful, profoundly jarring. It's like that my entire reality, my consciousness, my life, everything that I know, that I'm aware of, all of that will come to an end. And then what? It's over. That can induce, and many of us have that sense of fear. And I will say this, that again, this is what psychology speaks about, the idea that even if we are not aware that we have this fear, it really underlies so much of our lives, whether, again, consciously or subconsciously. A lot of what we do and how we live our lives is driven by this fear. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times we'll find ourselves, or we'll look around and see others, trying to fend off that fear of finality by creating something, creating legacy. Here people talk about creating legacy, right? Building something, creating legacy, all good things, driven, as psychologists explain, driven by this attempt to ward off, defend off, to slay the dragon of finality, that no, my life will not come to an end. I will not face the fate of mortality because I'm creating something that will live forever. And that is indeed the way many of us live our lives, right? I would say that that's, again, not me, but this is what is said about the desire, part of the desire to have children, is to create some sort of legacy, midar ladar, generation to generation, to have ourselves live on within our children, and please God, they continue our legacy and pass along to their children. So we have this sense, this almost underlying sense as human beings, that death is the end, and we are trying to push against that end. Let's take a look at text number 1. We'll get started. Hey, Mindy, good to see you. Mindy, can you please read text number 1? This comes from psychiatrist Irvin Yalom. This is page number 3, text number 1. It's going to be the blue one. Yeah.
Mortality has haunted us from the beginning of history. 4,000 years ago, the Babylonian hero Gilgamesh reflected on the death of his friend Enkidu with the words, "Thou hast become dark and cannot hear me. When I die, shall I not be like Enkidu? Sorrow enters my heart. I am afraid of death." Gilgamesh speaks for all of us. As he feared death, so do we all, each and every man, woman, and child. For some of us, the fear of death manifests only indirectly, either as generalized unrest or masqueraded as another psychological symptom. Other individuals experience an explicit and conscious stream of anxiety about death. And for some of us, the fear of death erupts into terror that negates all happiness and fulfillment.
And so thank you for reading that. And so I think what we see here from this text is the sense that, this fear, it's part and parcel of really the human condition, or the sense of finality is part and parcel of the human condition. And this fear, the fear that derives from that sense of finality, is experienced or manifest in different ways, either indirectly or directly, either low grade, higher level anxiety, etc. And again, we could say in a positive sense, it can also manifest itself in the desire to create legacy, to build something for the future, which is I would say, a very positive expression, but it's derived from the same fear. And so the core question, or the core issue we're going to address today is there another way? I mean, living with fear, living with anxiety, and trying to push it away and distract ourselves, that certainly doesn't sound like an ideal way to live, even if that's the way most people live. And so what we're going to do throughout today's session, our opening session, is explore Jewish perspectives on death, to try to mitigate, or really more than mitigate, try to flip and reimagine our whole understanding about death, which goes back to reimagining how we look at life itself, and hopefully walk out of today's session with a little bit of a lighter heart, with less fear about what comes after, what comes next, and more certainty in who we are and what we're about. So that's the goal today. So to do this, let's talk about the Jewish perspective on life. Right? To understand death, let's first talk about life, because if death is the end of life, we need to know what life is. So what does it mean to be alive? And what does it mean that you are alive? And really, I guess the most important question is, who's the you that's alive? Right? When I say you're alive, what does that mean? Who's the you? Who's the you that's alive? Or if you were to think about this yourself, you would say, who is the I that is alive? Who am I? I don't mean, I'm a doctor, I'm an accountant. I don't mean that. I mean, who am I? Who's the I? So to kind of get into this, I want to share a story. Story takes place a few hundred years ago. There was a rabbi whose name was Reb Zusha. It's a Hasidic rabbi, Reb Zusha of Anipol. And one day, he was pacing, walking back and forth, and he was almost crying. He was saying, "Where's Zusha? Where's Zusha?" Now, he was Zusha, but he was saying, "Where's Zusha?" And his students and colleagues thought he had, he was having a moment and something wasn't right. And they were very concerned, and they asked him, "Is everything okay?" And he said the following: one day, you'll find me on the ground, and I'll be dead. And you'll be crying and asking, "Where's Zusha? Where's Zusha?" The same Zusha you'll be looking for then, I'm looking for now. That's what he said. There's different ways to unpack that message, that story. The point that I want to extract from that story is that when it comes to life, we know that life is more than just a body. life is not just a composite of limbs. Life is way more than that. Because as we know, right, anyone who's been around someone who has passed away, right? I've unfortunately had the experience on many more than one occasion. The body might be there completely as it was a moment ago. It looks outwardly like nothing's changed. Right? The head is still there, the eyes are still there, the nose, the mouth, the ears, torso, arms, legs, everything is there. A moment before, they were alive. A moment later, they're no longer alive. So who's the they that's no longer alive? You with me on the question? Yeah. Which tells us that life is not synonymous with a body. There's something more than just possessing a body that constitutes life. Because a body in and of itself is not the definition of life. Take a look at how Kabbalah, Jewish mystical wisdom, describes this. This is a really powerful text. Text number 2. Tell me your name. Ducey. Okay, thank you. So please read text number 2, if you will. Give me 1 second. I'll pull this up over here. And all right, take it away, please. The wise.
The wise are aware that the human body is not the human being. When we speak of the human being, we are referring to the human's inner dimension. The body is merely a garment in which the soul is attired during its sojourn in this world.
Thank you. It's a powerful quote. It comes from Rabbi Vital, who was one of the great mystics of the 1500s, the great Jewish mystics, the Kabbalists. And he explains and he describes this thing that I'm presenting, this idea that the body, you are not a body, because the body could easily be deceased, and thus that's not you. You're not alive with a deceased body. The body in and of itself is not life. There's something else, another ingredient that is alive, that is life itself, that is operating within the human body. But it's not the human body itself that constitutes life. As the last few lines really poetically say, the body is merely a garment in which the soul is attired. Soul. Now, all of us, I'm sure, have a different imagination. When you hear the word soul, like the word God, it conjures up, I'm sure, different images or different meanings for everyone here. As we have people in this room, the number of people are probably the number of different perspectives. And yet, at its core, the soul is synonymous with the life, or the you that is you. So there's the body, but that's just a container. And then there's the you inside, that's the soul. Which is why I think all of us take offense when someone doesn't see us for who we are, but gets stuck on something external. Correct? You ever had that experience? Right? Or someone, in whatever context, someone is relating to you on the outside as opposed to the inside. It's offensive, right? Because it's almost like you want to say, but maybe you won't, maybe you will. It's like, don't you want to get to know who I am, right, on the inside? Because all of us, we know, are not a body. We are a spirit inside. We are a soul inside. It's almost like, to give you to cite an example. It's not a perfect example, but it's an example. Imagine, this really speaks to something we'll talk about soon in the lesson, but imagine an astronaut in outer space, foreign environment, a human being, forget astronaut, human being in outer space, can't breathe, right? Won't be able to function or exist in outer space. You know, there's people stuck in outer space now, right? Haven't there been movies made about that? Yeah, there's like 2 people, 2 astronauts, and they're like, we'll be back to get you in 2025. That's like, yeah. When we're talking about various fears, yeah, that might be one of them for me, right? It's like, oh my gosh, wouldn't that be anxiety a tiny bit, right? It's like, well, when we figure it out, I don't know all the details about why they can't get it, but like, when we figure it out, we'll get you. It's like a little bit bananas. Anyway, but getting back to the point here, so you take a human being and you put them in outer space. The reality is a body can't survive in outer space. So what do we do? You guys know what we do. What do? We take a body and take a person, and what do we do to have them survive in outer space? We put them in a spaceship, but also space suit. Oh, now that I have this fluffy, puffy white thing and a helmet, now I can exist. Now I can move around in outer space. Conception. You'll probably won't find me there anytime soon, but nonetheless. So here's the deal. The spacesuit is what allows the person to function in a foreign environment. Imagine a soul. A soul can't function in a foreign environment. Soul is a spiritual entity. It can't function in a physical reality. So it's placed inside a spacesuit, which is the body. But when you see the spacesuit arms moving, let me ask you a question. Who's moving the spacesuit? Is it the spacesuit moving, or is the person inside moving the spacesuit? And if you answer, which I hope you are answering in your head, that it's the person that moves the spacesuit, not the other way around, then you will hopefully agree with me as well, that it's the soul that moves us around in the spacesuit that we call the body, and not the other way around. Because we've all seen a body that is no longer alive, even though it looks like the same thing. If the astronaut takes off the spacesuit, guess what? Guess what it does? It just lies there. It just lies there inert and unmoving. And the same is true with the human condition. The body is just a spacesuit, or using the original language of Kabbalah, it's the attire, it's the garment of the soul. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. You want to use an easier example or whatever, less cosmic example, think of a hand inside a glove, right? Put on a glove, the glove is moving, not really. The hand is moving, take off the glove, put it down, it's not moving. Magically, right? Suddenly your magical glove is not moving anymore when it's sitting on the table. Okay. Good. Thinking of gloves, I'm thinking of winter. It'd be nice to have a little cold blast right now, right? All right. Now let's take this a little bit further. By the way, at any point in time, if you have a question or comment, please jump in, raise your hand or whatever it is, just jump in with any questions or comments. Let me pause now. Any questions or comments so far? Make sense? Okay, let's go deeper. So based on our definition of life, think about it, and I'm going to ask you a question to think about what we just explained. So who needs who? Based on what we just said. Does the soul need the body, or does the body need the soul? Who needs who? Oh, that's true. Based on what I said, yes, they do both need each other, correct. But in the context of life, of being alive, who needs who? Does the soul need a body, or does the body need a soul to be alive? What do you think? What do y'all think? Huh? You still think they need each other? Okay. All right. Here's the angle that I want to present right now. A body without a soul is not alive. It's a dead body. The body absolutely needs a soul. A soul without a body can't function. It's like an astronaut in outer space. But as we'll see, the soul is still alive, even if it's disembodied, as opposed to a body without a soul contains no life. It's almost like, I don't know, think about the sun. I don't know if there's sunlight coming in. I guess it is, right? Coming in through the windows. Does the sun need a room to shine? No, it's still shining. Does the room need the sun to be bright? Yeah, it kind of works that way. The room needs the sun doesn't need the room. So the body needs a soul. Without a soul, the body's like just a spacesuit without anything inside of it. The soul, though, doesn't at its core need a body. Yes, to function in this space it does, but not to live on its own. Now let's take a look at something that I think is very fascinating. Mike, please read. We're going to do text 3A and 3B as a pair, and this is going to contrast a little of the way in which the Torah, the Bible, distinguishes between the creation of humankind versus the emergence of animal kind. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. I share this quickly, share the screen, and let's jump right in. Text 3.
God formed the human of soil from the earth and breathed into his nostrils a neshama of life, and the human being became a living being.
Now contrast that with the next text, 3B as well, please.
God said, let the earth bring forth living beings of different species, cattle, creeping things, and the beasts of the earth according to their species. And it was so.
Thank you. So now let's contrast the two. Okay, so what did you notice as a point of differentiation between text 3a and text 3b. What did you guys notice? Did you notice a difference between how humankind emerges and how animals emerge?
Well,
What do you guys think? Say it again.
Animals didn't notice.
Okay, interesting. Take a look at what it says. Let the earth bring forth living beings. It does not mention a soul, correct? Does not mention a soul. Whereas when it comes to the human being, what does it say?
God, breathe the neshama.
Okay, so what's interesting, and when the commentators point this out, is that animals seem to emerge already alive. Right? They both come from the earth, as it were. Let the earth bring forth living beings. The first emergence of animals is as they are alive. Whereas when it comes to human beings, it first says that God forms the human of the soil of the earth. And then as a part two, he breathed into his nostrils a soul, a neshama of life. And that creates the human being into a living being, as opposed to animals, which just emerge as living beings. It's almost like other forms of life emerge alive. Human being emerges not alive, just a clod of earth, as it were. And only then, as a step two, is infused with a breath of life, which means, and this is again, as the commentaries and the mystics point out, that the Torah is emphasizing that certainly when it comes to human beings, although this is true of other forms of life, but primarily with human beings, the way it's described in Torah, we have this two-step creation process where step number one is a body, step number two is a soul, and the body clearly begins as not alive. The soul is what infuses life into it, and that's why, as we saw in text 3a, the human being became a living being. The implication is it's only after the soul is breathed into the body that it then becomes a living being, whereas before that infusion of soul, i.e. life, the body, which is formed from the earth, is lifeless. Again, all corroborating what I've mentioned before, the idea that the body itself is lifeless. It's just a spacesuit. It exists, but it doesn't have life or animation or consciousness. It's the soul that infuses all of that into the attire, into the suit, as it were, of the body. And this highlights a very important idea, and that is that the body and soul, not only are they two different realities, they have independent origins. So it goes on. They have independent origins, right? The body originates from the earth. The soul originates from God, right? God breathed into his nostrils a neshama of life. So yes, God forms the human body as well, but it's formed from the earth, whereas the soul is emanating from almost, it sounds like, from God himself. So they each have their own separate origin. That one is from the earth, one is from more directly from God, as it were. And then as the two come together, the soul infuses the body and makes it alive, which tells us a very important thing. Just as they begin in different spaces, or let's say it this way, just as they begin independent of each other, they don't begin together, they begin independent. They also, as the arc of life progresses, they also end in different spaces, or as we'll see, body ends and soul does not. Yes.
And I know people that say their dogs have a soul.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. And that's why I said that although a lot of these truths can be applied to different scenarios, it's clear by the human being that there is this two-step process, which not only highlights how things came together, but as we'll see more importantly in text 3c, that as body and soul separate from each other, they each go their own separate ways. They don't share the same ultimate fate, which has a lot to tell us about death itself. Now, how that transfers to other things. What was that movie? Only dogs go to heaven, right? Wasn't there a movie like that? Was there? Something like that? Something with dogs in heaven? All dogs go to heaven. There you go. All right. Either way. So I will say this, Kabbalah doesn't speak extensively about the afterlife of animals, but we can we can conjecture about how to apply it, but there's certainly a lot to talk about. Mike, if you'll do one more text, we'll give you all the threes if that's okay. Text 3C. This is also a short one. The Chizkuni, take a look at what he says at 3C.
God did what he had done. God did what he had done with any other creature. He blew into Adam with his Holy Spirit, neshama, that is immortal and does not perish when the body does.
And that, thank you. And that is probably one of the key texts. I mean, they're all key, but one of the really central texts of today's class. This is the Chizkuni, classic commentary from the 1200s on the Torah, on the Bible. And the Chizkuni explains that the message, the reason why the Torah tells us that Adam is created first with a body and then a soul is to tell us that as they uncouple, they each have their own fate. And when the body perishes, and the body ultimately does perish, and that means that the body ultimately is laid to rest and returns back to the earth, the soul on its side also returns, but on its return, it does not lose its reality. It remains alive. The soul is immortal and does not perish when the body does. So again, you have a body which is just at that original state. It's a clod of earth, essentially. You have a soul and a neshama in Hebrew, a soul that infuses it with life. If anyone saw the promo video that we sent out, or that I posted on social media, it's like that. It was a beautiful promo video that had almost like a little flame that's like glowing. Imagine that you have like just a kind of a dark space and then a glowing ember, a glowing flame inside that is illuminating it. Well, the moment the flame moves away, separates from that body, well, what happens? The body returns as it was, which is lifeless, but the soul remains as it is, which is life-giving. Now, yes, the soul can't operate in this world without a body, but that doesn't mean that it no longer exists, Ronnie.
At what point does the soul enter?
At what point does the soul enter the body? Good. So that's a good question. I'm thinking if we're going to get to this later on in the course, the short answer is that in Jewish thought, there is a bit of a continuum as far as when the soul enters the body. It says that the soul is earmarked. We'll have a text soon about this. The soul is earmarked for the person, before. Souls are created a long time ago, but souls are then earmarked for, it says 40 days before conception. There is an earmark of the soul. I guess they have the odds on, they know what's going to happen on that front as well above. So soul is earmarked for a certain person, and then it slowly integrates. So it says when the Talmud says when the fetus is in the womb, the soul is hovering above its head, which means it's not fully integrated. Then at birth, it becomes more integrated. At the baby naming or Brit Milah, it becomes more integrated. Bar Bat Mitzvah becomes even more integrated, etc. So it is a continuous process. And I guess I would frame it like this. If the soul is not just life-giving, but also spiritual, the question is, how integrated are we with our spiritual purpose? And I think we can safely say that that is an ongoing process, right? When we're younger, we might not care so much about what our higher purpose is or what our, mission in life is, but maybe as we get older, we become more integrated. The soul becomes more integrated. So when does life begin? It's complicated. But ask a Jewish mother, and the answer is the kids graduate medical school. Right? But that's the joke, obviously. But it is a bit of a moving continuum. There's a slow integration. As far as uncoupling, that happens in one moment, but as we'll see in subsequent sessions, there's also various stages by which the soul moves further away from the body. But all that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. The main point that we want to establish here is, again, just putting a few pieces together. Number one, the real you is not your body, it's your soul. And number two, your soul and body, although they are, right now, our souls and bodies are coupled, are partnered with each other. They weren't always, and they won't always be. I think that's probably the clearest way I can say it, right? They weren't always. There was a body and a soul, and they were separate. And they won't always be. There will come a point in time where the body is on its own and the soul is on its own. The good news is the real you is not the body. The real you is the soul. And the soul is eternal. The soul is not subject to the ups and downs or to the mortality of the body. And that is a very important thing to remember. Okay, so Whereas the body is subject to, for example, the body is subject to illness, aging, pain, and death. A soul is not subject to those phenomena. Those are all things that the body is subject to, the spacesuit, right? The glove, whatever you want to call it. That's all stuff the body is subjected to, but not the soul. The soul is pure life, energy, consciousness, the real you. Again, not the you. It's hard to put into terms. I mean, I can feel it, but I hope it's being conveyed appropriately and correctly. But it's like when you think about, like, so who am I? And you have thoughts. What are those thoughts? Are they a brain? I mean, how do you measure an emotion, a feeling? Can you measure an emotion? You can measure a heartbeat, but can you measure an emotion? Right? These are, it's a little bit deeper. It's a little bit deeper than just the physical pieces of it. And so, as Judaism explains, a soul is not synonymous with the body. The body hosts the soul, but the soul is impervious to the ups and downs and the mortality of the body. And the soul is immortal, which means, if we put all the pieces together, it means that you, the real you, is in fact eternal. And this can go a long way to help us with our fear of death, because our fear of death is about finality, about things ending. Well, the first message of this course, the first message of today's classes, death is not the end, because the real you doesn't end at death. The body may end, but the real you doesn't end at death. The real you, the soul, doesn't end. Death is merely a new stage of life for the eternal soul, the real you. So I know it's a lot to digest and unpack, but let's keep on going, and let's throw some more ideas in it. Let's take a look at how the Midrash describes the journey of the soul into the body. Right? So Rose, please read this one. This is going to be text number 4.
40 days before the conception of a child, God summons the angel in charge of souls and tells him, "Bring before me a certain soul that is now in paradise. Its name is such and such, and its appearance is such and such." This is possible because all the souls that are born in this world were created on the day the world was created and exist until the end of time. The angel goes and brings the soul before God. The soul bows and prostrates itself before the Supreme King of Kings. God instructs the soul, "Please enter the seminal drop that is currently in the hands of the angel in charge of pregnancy." The soul protests, "Master of the universe, I am quite satisfied with the world I have inhabited since the day you created me. I am holy and pure, hewn from your throne of glory. Why do you wish to cause me to enter this putrid drop?"
Okay, now it's interesting how the mechanics are described, but mechanics aside, it's an interesting portrayal of how the process of life. And Ronnie, I think it touched a little bit on your question. When are souls connected with the body? Well, here we have this clear source in Midrashic literature dating at least 2,000 years from Jewish wisdom. And it says that 40 days before conception, God essentially matches up the soul with a child to be born. And what is the soul's response? That last paragraph, if you could say it in your own words, what does the soul say? I don't want to go. I mean, right? That's what the Midrash reports that the soul says. The soul protests. The soul's not like, yes, an adventure. The soul is saying, are you kidding me? What is wrong with this? This is great. This is like the 4 seasons without the 4 seasons, because it's all heaven and paradise. Like, this is great. What's wrong with this? We got a mate in the shade. Why are you sending me down? Clearly, according to this text, the soul does not want to be here inside a spacesuit. Yeah.
When the person dies and the soul is still there, does soul then go to another person?
We'll talk about that in subsequent lessons. That would touch on the issue of the question of reincarnation. And does a soul come back in another spacesuit, or is its mission completed
He
and
likes to be up there. He doesn't want to come down to be.
right, then maybe it would, which would sound painful for the soul, theoretically. Now, let's take a look at another text that seems to also echo a similar sentiment. This is text number 5. Ronnie, please read this one on page number 10. Where it says, this world is like a courtyard.
Like a corridor before the world to come. Prepare yourself in the corridor so that you may enter the paradise. A single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all of this.
And so thank you. And so if you look at this, at this text that we just read, and I'll ask the question. So based on this text, we have the current reality or our world, and then you have heaven or the world to come, the afterlife, whatever you want to call that. You have the hereafter. So simple question is, which one is more, based on text 5, which one is more desirable? What's the answer? The world to come, heaven. So 1 second. The soul was in heaven. Let's just call it heaven. Just simpler. Okay. The soul's in heaven and it gets the call from the bullpen. Any baseball fans? It's like, hey, we need you in the game. The soul's like, no, I don't want to. I guess it's sent against its will, right? So it finds itself here. And then we have another teaching that says, all this is anyway just preparation. The main thing is back up there. So based on these two texts, it would seem clear that a soul's place is very much where? Here or there? What would you say? There, right? It starts off there. It wants to be there. It doesn't want to be here. Even when it's here, the goal is to get there. You with me on this? Mm-hmm. The soul really belongs not here. It's like the folks in outer space. They should probably come home, right? They don't belong there. I know Elon Musk wants everyone to live there, whatever, but that's like aside from the fact, right? These two astronauts, like, we should probably figure out a way how to get them back to Earth. The point is that the space of a soul, it seems very clear, it does not belong here. And yet, this is not the complete picture as we find in Judaism, because, as you may know, Judaism is a religion that celebrates life, that celebrates the life that we have, which is soul in a body in this world. We say, the most famous Jewish phrase may very well be l'chaim. I don't know if it's the most famous, it's the most delicious, perhaps, but I say a little l'chaim, right? L'chaim means what? What does l'chaim mean? To life. To life, which means not life, not to death. We don't say, God forbid, the opposite. We say l'chaim, to life, which means that we celebrate life. So if the body is such a drag for the soul, oh, what a pain. The soul doesn't want to be here, wants to get out of here. Oh, such a drag to schlep around this body, this spacesuit. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm stuck. The soul's like, let me just be free of this. What's all this l'chaim business? What's all this celebration of life? Why is Judaism so obsessed in a positive way with life? What's going on? And so I need to fill in the picture so it's not incomplete. And the filling in of the picture is the following. That yes, even though life is, the soul is synonymous with life, and the soul starts off above and it doesn't want to be here, and the greatest pleasure, all the single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all of this world. All of that is true. Nonetheless, while the soul is here, in its bodily space on planet Earth, it can do something that it cannot do at home. And that is a mitzvah. To do a mitzvah, which we'll just translate colloquially as a good deed. Something tangible, something positive, to make change in a physical environment. It cannot do other than its experience. It cannot do that in any other way other than being right here, right now. The only way to do a mitzvah is by being on Earth, stuck inside a spacesuit, in a body, etc. Again, think about the astronaut. The astronaut is sent to outer space. Why? I don't know. Maybe to research rocks on the moon or other planets. I don't really know exactly what to do up there, but whatever they're doing, they need to be up there. I'm sure if they could do it down here, they wouldn't need to go up there. Whatever they're up there for can only be done there, on site. To do it there, you need a spacesuit, some training, you need a helmet, you need a spacecraft. Great, wonderful. But once you're there, it can only get done there. The same thing is true for the soul. The soul cannot do a mitzvah in heaven. Souls, and this is important, souls don't do mitzvahs, don't have mitzvahs up in heaven. What are they doing? I don't know. They're basking in the bliss of the world to come. I just picture like a soul, right, leaning back on a beach chair, and it's amazing. And angels are floating by on clouds, right, playing harps or whatever, however you play a harp, and that's it. And it's amazing. Change, action, right, mitzvah, transformation, making a positive impact, only can happen here. It dons the spacesuit, it's thrown into the game on planet Earth, and then the change happens. Take a look at a powerful story. We're going to skip a little bit. We're going to go back. I'm just kind of remixing this lesson. Take a look at text number 12. Claire, please read text 12 on page 17. And it's a powerful Talmudic story that talks about the great sage, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, what happened on his deathbed.
Judah the Prince fell ill and lay on his deathbed. Rabbi Chaya entered and found him weeping. My master explained to Rabbi Chaya, "Why do you weep? Was it not taught if one dies smiling, it is a good sign for him, while weeping, it is a bad sign for him?" Rabbi Judah replied, "I weep because of my inability to study the Torah and observe the periods after death."
Which is a powerful idea. Thank you for reading that. The powerful idea is that his tears were not the fact that he could no longer go to his favorite restaurant or he wouldn't be able to play golf with his buddies again. It's because at the core, he wouldn't have an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Because souls can't do mitzvahs. They can't. They don't have a physical body. Every mitzvah has a physical embodiment of the mitzvah doing a mitzvah. Can't do a mitzvah without a body. And so he wasn't crying because he feared death. He wasn't crying because he feared the end of his bodily experience. He was crying because he was lamenting the loss of the opportunity to do a mitzvah. And this is indeed, if we go back to text number 7, right, we're going to go back now to text 7. This is indeed God's response to that soul. Remember we read in the Midrash about the soul when it's sent down below, right? And the soul is afraid. The soul doesn't want to go. It's like, no, I don't want to go. It's great up here. So what does God reply to the soul? Let's read this. Susan, please read text number 7 as the Midrash continues. Take it away.
God hurries to reassure the dissenting soul. The world to which I am bringing you will prove more beneficial than the one you presently inhabit. Indeed, I formed you exclusively for the purpose of creating mortal life from this particular drop of seed. With that, God forcibly installs the soul.
There you go. He says, God says to the soul, thank you for reading that. The world to which I'm bringing you will prove more beneficial than the one you presently inhabit. In other words, there is an advantage. There is a benefit to the soul being put in this world, inside the body, in that spacesuit, and to do good deeds, then basking in the divine rays in heaven. If you want to think about some terminology, its pleasure is greater above, but its purpose is greater below. Pleasure versus purpose. It has greater pleasure above, spiritual pleasure, but its purpose, the purpose of the soul is found right here. And by the way, we're not speaking theoretically. All of us are sitting around this room today, right? We're all here. We're all alive. This is a message for you and I. Our souls started there, are here right now for a purpose. Yes, it would be more enjoyable for the soul to be disembodied from the body and be able to, bask in spiritual reality and divine radiance. But on a purpose-driven level, there's nothing can match this experience right here, right now. So, which world is greater? Which reality is greater? Heaven or earth? The world to come or this world? Which is greater? What would you say? I'll tell you what the right answer is. That's Yiddish. Whenever we had a question in yeshiva about a contradiction in various texts, the teacher would inevitably say, which means in English, it's all relative. It all depends, right? It's like, you can look at it both ways. So which is greater, this world or the other world? If you're talking from a perspective of pleasure, which is more enjoyable for the soul, there. On a purpose level, right? Where do we achieve the greatest purpose? Right here. Yeah.
What if the person's a bad person?
That's a problem. When I say that's a problem, can you imagine how traumatic that is
I mean,
for the soul?
What about, like Hitler? Okay, did he have a soul?
Okay, so now you're asking really complicated questions. Here's the thing. Let me just lay out a disclaimer. I cannot answer about any specific individual, certainly not an extreme case. I can only share with you what, in general, Kabbalah teaches, or Judaism teaches with Midrash and other sources, and the Torah itself. The general idea is that human beings have souls. The soul is divine. The body is the spacesuit. Because of that arrangement, the soul can become corrupted in the sense, let me clarify, not that the soul itself necessarily becomes corrupted, but the soul's experience can become corrupted through the experience of the body. We have free choice, which means that at any given moment, we can choose to live by the mission, or we can choose to defy the mission. We can choose to further the mission of others around us. We can choose to sabotage the mission. You send an astronaut to space. There could be somebody, it could be somebody with free choice cutting, I don't know why I'm using hedge shears or whatever, cutting whatever, poking spacesuits. No one should do that, right? Conceptually, could that happen? Sure. Would that be terrible? Absolutely. So I think it's a very similar concept. The soul comes down, the soul has a purpose, but we have free choice. And the part of the free choice is,
Could it be that that's why some people are like tortured, because the conflict between the body, what it wants to do, and the soul, and the people themselves are in such manipulation?
absolutely. So, and I should repeat it for our online crew. So, it's very possible that a lot of internal turmoil, strife, etc., is born of this conflict between a purpose-driven soul and a body in a spacesuit that is very often, I don't know, not always on board with the mission. You see, it's easy when it comes to a glove. The glove doesn't have its own free choice. The glove doesn't have any ability to say, I don't want to move like the fingers move, right? Or like a car, you're driving a car, you tell the car where to go, unless it's self-driving, in which case all bets are up. But right, conceptually, you drive the car follows passively along. By the way, it's tzaddikim. It's interesting. The language that the mystics use to describe a tzaddik is a perfectly righteous person, describes a tzaddik as a merkava. Merkava in Hebrew, merkava. Anybody know the Hebrew? You know what's called merkava? The tanks are called merkava in Israel. The tanks are called merkava. Merkava doesn't mean tank. It means a chariot, because they didn't have cars. They had chariots. What's a chariot? Or a wagon? What's a chariot? It goes where the driver directs it. Some people, their body is like a chariot or a conduit or like a vehicle for the will of the soul. Others, the body, the spacesuit, goes to war with the soul. And I think that's the edge. But that adds another layer of complexity and into the conversation, which is a part of life. But before we get into the complication, let's just establish the general notion. The general notion is that life exists within the soul. The soul is what gives the body life. The body acts as a spacesuit or as a garment for the soul. The soul can only fulfill its mission through the medium of the body, because without a body, it just couldn't do anything. I mean, a soul can't give tzedakah, can't help the poor, can't help the needy without a body. How are you going to give tzedakah if you don't have the physical means or the ability to, I don't know, to interface on any level with the physical world? So you need a body and you need to be in a physical environment to create that physical change. And that ultimately is the purpose of the soul coming down below. Now, where's the greater pleasure? Above. Where's the purpose? The purpose is below. This explains a paradox. And the paradox is found in text 8. And when I say paradox, it's actually very confusing. Because if you recall, text 5 said, what did text 5 say? You look a little bit back. A single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all of this world. And at that point, we're like, oh, wow, the world to come is so much better than this reality. But then take a look at text number 8. Can you, Laura, please read text number 8.
single moment of repentance and of good deeds in this world is greater than all of the world to come.
So what's going on here? 1 second. We just said in text 5, at the end of text 5, that the world to come is greater than this world. Here we're saying that this world is greater than all the world to come. What's going on? Which is it? Right? Great taste, less filling. Remember those commercials? Miller Lite? Right. Miller Lite, I think. All right. Great. What is it? Is this world, that world? But if you look at the language, again, just flip back and forth between text 5 and 8 quickly. If you look at text 5, it says a single moment of bliss in the world to come is greater than all this world. What that means is on a pleasure level, spiritual pleasure, there's no question. World to come, heaven is way greater. Spiritual bliss here, not really, right? But if you look at text 8, a single moment of tshuva, ma'asim tovim, repentance and good deeds. I know there's mitzvah in this world, greater than all the world to come. Purpose, mitzvah, absolutely. You can't compare. The space of mitzvah is here, not there. The space of bliss is there. So the question is, what do you want? Not a question, what do you want? We all want to, we need to work with those two spaces of reality or eras of reality within our larger soul continuum. Now, this explains another paradox that we find in the text. This is text number 10. Selena, yes, text 10. Now, hold on. If you break that down, thank you. That makes no sense. Whoa, 1 second. Against your will, you're formed. Okay, that means you don't want to be here. Against your will, you are born. Don't want to be here. Against your will, you live. Don't want to be here. Against your will, you die. What? I do want to be here? What just happened? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Don't want to leave here. Can you make up your mind? What's going on? You want to be here? You don't want to be here. It's complicated. Right now, you know that in Yiddish. It's complicated. Against your will, you're formed. You don't want to be here. You want to enjoy bliss. Against your will, you're born. Again, you don't want to be here. Against your will, you live. You don't want to be here. But against your will, you die because you do want to be here. Because although you don't really want to be here, you know that what you can do here, you can't do anywhere else, and therefore you're needed here. I mean, we've all been in that situation where you may not want to be there, but you know you need to be there. And because you need to be there, there is a satisfaction and somewhat of a pleasure also that you get from doing something important where you are, where you're needed. If someone were to ask you, like, what would you want to do on a Sunday morning? I don't know. Hang around, do nothing. But what about build a house for someone? You know, Habitats for Humanity, whatever, volunteer to create something amazing for someone else. Do I want to do that? I'd rather be in bed. But will it feel meaningful to do that? Absolutely. So do I want to do that? Yes. Do I not want to do that? Also yes. You know why? It's complicated. Right? Complicated for the soul as well. The point of this is to say simply this, and this is, again, one of the major lines of today, and I'm hoping this not only resonates, but this will be one of the major takeaways. When it comes to death, and the question is, the fear of death. We said the fear of death is, a lot of the fear of death is because it's the end. Not just because it's unknown, because the end. So hold on 1 second. From a Jewish perspective, it's not the end. Not the end. It's the end of something, but it's not the end of everything. Right? It's the end of something. It's the end of this relationship. It's the end of an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, tried in his deathbed not about the fact that he was physically going to depart. Well, yeah, physically, because he won't be able to do any more mitzvahs. That's why he's crying. So is it the end on some level? But it's also not the end on another level. And so like this. If we see that life is a composite of body and soul, the soul exists before the body, the soul is then put inside the body for a certain amount of time. There's a contract. No one knows how long the contract is. Everyone's contract is different, right? Only God knows the contract. Maybe the soul knows, but it's not telling us conscious what that contract is, right? We each have a span of time of allotment. That we have a mission, soul inside the body, to do a certain amount of things. And we have a checklist. And do we get all the checklists? Do we hit every box? Hopefully. It's possible that we don't. It's also possible. But when our contract is up, body and soul separate. The body goes, the spacesuit is hung back on the rack, as it were, return to the body, return to the earth. And the soul continues to live on. Not in mission space, but in pleasure space, spiritual pleasure space, which means the following conclusion. Yes, life is precious. Judaism maintains life, this life right here, is precious and is valuable. But no, death is not the end. Death is not the end of life. And this approach can help us stave off our fear of death. To highlight this, I'll tell you a story. The story goes back to 1927. And the previous Chabad Rebbe, who was born in 1880 and passed away in 1950, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. So he was arrested. This is after the Bolshevik Revolution, after the rise of communism. And the communists really wanted to stamp out any overt sense of Judaism. If there was any Judaism, it would be on their terms and not on the terms of Judaism's terms. Okay. So many rabbis, including the previous Rebbe, did a lot of activity for, you guys can, I can't even say, did a lot of activity to keep Russian Jewry alive, Soviet Jewry alive. And they arrested this great leader, the previous Rebbe. They arrested him in 1927 and they interrogated him. And he was initially slated to be executed. It was commuted to 10 years of harsh labor, which was commuted to 3 years of harsh labor, which was ultimately commuted altogether. And he was released only like several weeks after his initial incarceration, went through this entire range of different verdicts. Ultimately, he was altogether released, but told he has to leave the country. That's how they dealt with him. There was a lot of international pressure. He was a global leader, and there was a lot of pressure, and they just basically said, okay, you can live, we're gonna let you go, but you have to move out of the country, move out of Russia. But this is how he describes one of his interactions with the interrogators. Renee, please read this one, text number 11.
One of the interrogators raised a revolver that sat on the desk before him. He looked me in the eye and mockingly said, "This small toy has incredible powers. It causes principles to melt away. It opens mouth, under its spell, even mutes have become talkative." I responded, "We're quite mistaken. That toy only has an effect on faint-hearted non-believers, those with one world and multiple gods. We, on the other hand, have one God and two worlds. As such, I don't panic at the sight of your toy. It has no effect on me whatsoever."
Look at that line. Yeah, that toy, referring to the revolver, referring to the gun, that only works with someone who has one world and multiple gods. We have one God and two worlds. And that message is so powerful. The message is, of course, this rabbi recognized the value of life and wished to live. That's not a question. Not a question, did he want to live or not? Of course he wanted to live. But the prospect of death being imposed upon him against his will was not frightening, because he knew that death is not the end for an immortal soul, and that ultimately there is a better world that waits, right? Death is not the end. Death is just a transition into another reality. Now, again, all of this, the goal of all of this is to stave off our fear of death. Okay, let me open this back up to questions. Any questions or comments? What do you guys have? Questions, comments, thoughts?
I think a lot of the fear also relates to what happens at the time of transition. If there's pain involved, if there, like people always say, I just want to go to sleep and pass away.
Right, and not feel that pain. Yeah. We'll be talking a little bit about transition in some upcoming classes, but I think you're not just talking about transition. I think you're talking about also about actual pain.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think maybe in a large part, that's more of the fear than getting to the other side.
Right.
It's
Right.
how that's gonna occur.
Yeah. Point well taken. Good. Good. I don't know if I can say much on that, but it's yeah.
I agree. Physical feels pain.
Right.
You know what it is.
Right.
You don't know our soul is. It's that same physical pain. So
Right.
I
And
think
we'll be talking about the spiritual part of it in the other class. But you're right. The question about does the fear of the body feeling pain, and what would that feel like? That can be very jarring. Yes. Yes. Any other questions, comments? Questions, comments? All right. Let's continue. Let's continue. We got more to talk about. All right. So let's go deeper in this. And we're going to take a look at another teaching. This one is text number 13 on page 18. Let me get it fired up over here. And this one talks about, it's a unique teaching about tzaddikim. Again, tzaddikim is a Hebrew word for the righteous. But take a look at what the Talmud says about tzaddikim. Sure, yeah, take it away.
Okay.
Yes.
Righteous people are referred to as being alive.
So take a look at this one. Tzaddikim, after their demise, are referred to as being alive. It's a bit of a radical statement. Even after their passing, we call them alive. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? So, but here's the question. If it's that the soul lives on, that's true of every person. Why just the righteous? You understand my question? It says righteous people, even after their death, are referred to as being alive. But isn't that so for everybody? Isn't everybody alive? Isn't the soul alive for everyone after death? And I'm not asking rhetorically, that's actually the case. Every soul is alive. Every soul is by definition immortal. Only the body is mortal. The soul is immortal. So what does it mean that only tzaddikim are alive? Right? Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it means that your soul is alive when the people that we on earth continue to think about it and talk about it.
That's powerful.
And that's how I had to deal with some of my very close family.
I want to repeat that into the camera so that everyone can hear what you just said. The idea that of remaining alive after death is essentially, I'll just use a little bit of a different term, legacy, or the fact that what you lived for is carried on by the ones who you love and who love you. And I think that's powerful. That's powerful. There's another angle I want to take over here, because the truth is, a legacy, you don't have to be a tzaddik to leave a legacy, right? So what's this about tzaddikim, or why tzaddikim are referred to as being alive? It sounds like if it's just because the soul is immortal, that's true with everybody. If it's ability to leave a legacy, anyone can leave a legacy. So what's tzaddikim? So I'll share with you another insight. And this insight, again, it's all built on everything we've said up until now, but I think it's very important. What lives on after we die? Our soul. Our soul is, by nature, spiritual, not physical. And so the question is this. When we think about a person, or when we think about ourselves, what will live on? And the answer is the spiritual component, not what we ate for lunch, and not the physical stuff. It's the spiritual stuff that lives on. And so the more spiritual a life we live right now, the less of a jarring transition it's going to be for us. Does that make sense? Because we'll have trained ourselves to live an immortal life. If we focus our lives in the here and now on the physical, well, that will come to an end, correct? And the spiritual lives on, but it will be a larger transition or a breach from what we're used to. If our consciousness day to day is about the physical, right, then that will end and we'll have to shift consciousnesses to another space. Whereas if our consciousness is dominated by the spiritual, well, then that life that we lived will continue more seamlessly after we die. And so the Talmud says that it is tzaddikim, which in this context refers to those that live a spiritually oriented life in the here and now. It's tzaddikim that are alive, living an immortal life, even within the spacesuit. Does that make sense? Yes, an immortally driven life as opposed to a mortally driven life. I hope that what I'm saying is physically clear, right? Immortal and mortal. If we live mortal lives focused on the physical part, again, that's living a life almost of death. And I'm not trying to use any shock terms, but it's living a life. It's focusing our lives on things that anyway will be gone, will end. So it's living a life filled with mortal pursuits, as opposed to living a life in the here and now focused on immortal pursuits. Well, then that is a seamless transition and continuum from this life to the beyond. And so just to say this maybe in simpler terms, living a life dedicated to purpose, to using today's kind of language I spoke about earlier, a mitzvah-oriented life, which is a purpose-driven life. Well, that ensures that our life as we live it is immortal, and that the transition is easier because we're anyway living a spiritual life. And so spiritual life that continues, it's just a continuum. We drop the spacesuit, but it's a continuum, as opposed to having our entire consciousness rotating around the physical and then having a hard stop and then trying to reorient ourselves into the spiritual, even though it's the soul's orientation that continues, but it still would be jarring if the soul had an experience that was more physically oriented than spiritually oriented. The idea that physicality, that our materialism has a hard stop, is highlighted in a classic story. I don't know if it ever happened, but maybe it's a parable of a story that could have happened. They say that there was a fellow who he did well for himself. He was fairly comfortable. He passes away and he leaves a few notes. One note he says to open up right away upon his passing. And the second note is, he says, after the Shiva, after the 7 days of mourning. Okay. Passes away, and everyone's sad. The family is sad. They open up the first note and talks about various things that he requests and things they want. One of them is that he wants to be buried in wearing his favorite pair of socks. Right? That's what it says. Okay, well, that's one of his final wishes. So the family, the kids, go to the Chevra Kadisha, the Jewish Burial Society, and they relay the requests, the final wishes. And the Chevra Kadisha, the Burial Society, says, we can't do that. We can't honor that request. Right? Simple shroud, that's the Jewish tradition. A person is buried in a simple shroud and no socks, not even a favorite pair of socks. So the family said, well, but there's the final request. Don't worry, where your father is right now in the world of truth, Olam HaEmet, the world of truth, he appreciates the fact that the best thing would be to follow the mitzvah, to do it the right way, and the right way is no socks. He certainly does not want you to honor that request. No socks. 7 days later, and so he's buried without any socks. 7 days later, they open up the second note, and it reads the following. By now, you've surely realized that you can't take anything with you, not even your favorite pair of socks. That's what he writes to his kids. I don't know if the story ever happened, but it could have happened. But even if it didn't, there's a powerful message, because we can't take anything with us. We can leave things behind, and we can leave legacies. But for ourselves, the question is, what life did we live? And was the life that we lived at odds with our true essence, or was it consistent with our true essence? Did we live a life worthy of the name life, or did we live a spacesuit-oriented life that was at odds with the astronaut in the spacesuit, creating that conflict and tension throughout our lives? Or did we let go of the tension, and live our highest, best, purest life. That is the meaning of the Talmudic statement. Tzaddikim are referred to as being alive after their demise. And it's not only after their demise. It's even while alive in this world, their life is truly a life. And it's not they and some people. This is all of us. All of us can choose. And it's not either or. At any moment in any day, we can choose to do something positive, right? Study some Torah, call up a friend, be there for someone in need, whatever it is, whatever mitzvah. There's so many opportunities to do good things. It's endless. I'm not even going to attempt to share a list. Everyone knows all the good things that they can do, and possibilities are endless. So doing positive is something that the soul cannot achieve or experience anywhere else, only in this leg of the journey. It's here where that makes a big difference. And it's by doing that we grant our lives right now real life, authentic life, consistent life. And that life continues in the hereafter. The restaurants we ate at, I'm not trying to knock restaurants, but it's coming to mind, right? The other stuff, the fact that we went to, we had season tickets to the Lakers, all fun. I mean, I have to fly to LA every time the Lakers play. That would be a little awkward. But I'm just saying, like, whatever, Hawks, whatever it is, right? All of that, here today, gone tomorrow. You can't take that with you. But you can take, what we all can take, the good deeds that we do and the legacy that we leave. And so, as we conclude today's first session, I would like to just kind of summarize what we covered today. What we covered today is that the most powerful response to the fear of death is the commitment to life, commitment to living a good life. And when I say good life, not just an honest life, but really a meaningful life, a purpose-driven or a soul purpose-driven life. That is the true meaning of living. And that is the most powerful response to the fear of death. Because if life is life, then death is not death. In other words, if the life we're living is real life, then death does not bring an end to that. Because death is only the end of the spacesuit, but it's not the end of the spiritual part of ourselves. It's not the end to the good deeds. Now, we can't do good deeds after death because we don't have the body. But that spiritual consciousness and that spiritual commitment and that spiritual awareness, that lives on. And so, if the fear of death is about the fear of things ending, of there being a finality, well, that's only true of ice cream, pizza, and baseball. That there's no, I don't think that translates in the hereafter. But life is about more soulful things. And when life is about death, then life truly doesn't end. So on a practical note, 2 points to think about. Number one, if death scares us because we think of it as the end, let's contemplate the eternality of the soul. Soul doesn't die, soul can't die. Number two, if the end still scares us because we think that we'll lose so much, we ought to think about how we can do fewer things that end, and we can do more things that remain eternal. And with that, we can all be granted and experience a measure, a taste of eternal life, even as we live these temporal, mortal lives of soul and body. Thank you very much for joining me today for lesson number 1. Thank you. Hope doing this solo. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week, the class is called Taking Leave, Our Evolving Relationship with the Departed. What happens at the moment of death, as we talked about a little bit today? How does the soul journey away from the body? And do we remain connected with our loved ones? And do they remain connected with us? All of that we'll talk about next week. We have a very powerful class called Taking Leave. Okay? Yes. Yes, I will be sending that out for subsequent classes, and that you'll have access to that. Tell me your name. Shari? Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. Have we met before? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, then I probably recognize you. Awesome. Good to see you. Which one? Oh, that was great. Yeah. That was a good one. Very cool.
I ended up
A couple years ago when you taught it, and I ended up getting COVID in Israel, so I basically binged class all like over TV in Waldorf, like worst places. So yeah, so like the positive memories of the class. No. I'll have it.
All right, awesome.
I've been trying to have
Yeah. No, I definitely, I recognize you from, and also some.
I go by fresh by that.
Right. Yes.
My personal life, you know, by heart. Very, very nice.
Got it. Super cool. Awesome.
So nice to see you.
So glad that you're here.
Excited to be there.
Yeah, either one's fine. Yeah, good to see you. Hey, Deborah, good to see you.
It was great. This was good.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. Definitely important topics and soulful topics.
And I'm glad to hear your take on it, because I took this class like about 9 years ago, but it was a different rabbi. So, you know, and I love the way you teach. So
Thank you. All right,
anyway,
we'll see you next week. If
see you
not,
next week.
before then.
Stay-
All right,
Thank
see you.
you.
Bye, Susan. Bye, Deborah. See you guys.